Principal Martha Jenkins, approaching 60, was perpetually buried by Liberty High School's endless daily trivialities. Her colleagues labeled her rigid and old-fashioned, but deep inside she felt a profound helplessness about the lackadaisical attitudes of young teachers and the speed at which the world was changing. Though principled and deeply devoted to education, whenever she looked in the mirror, she saw only emptiness staring back. To outsiders, she seemed strong and perfectly in control, but only she knew how much she yearned for warmth and true companionship. That was until a new PE coach named Ben Carter arrived at the school. Like a ray of light, he brightened Principal Martha Jenkins's dim routine. Ben, in his early 30s, was athletic and radiated youthful energy, leading students daily with enthusiasm and greeting teachers with warm sincerity. Yet he had his own private burdens. Since graduating university, he'd bounced around as a substitute, never certain of a permanent job, with a future that felt unstable and blurry. He tried to keep a smile on his face, but a trace of quiet sadness lingered in his heart. One day, during a meeting to plan the school's anniversary celebration, several young teachers again challenged the principal's proposal. Normally, she would listen in silence and then hold her ground. But that day, one teacher's tone dripped with sarcasm and disrespect. As tensions rose, Coach Ben Carter suddenly raised his hand and stood. "Colleagues, even if opinions differ, mutual respect is essential. I think Principal Jenkins's plan is very reasonable, and we might reconsider it." The principal was stunned, and a heavy silence fell over the room as everyone processed the moment. The coach's calm, steady courage rippled through their hearts, and a gentle warmth bloomed inside Principal Martha Jenkins. She admired his integrity and bravery to stand up for fairness. After the meeting, she left with her usual stern face, but a warmth she hadn't felt in years began to blossom in her heart. For once, someone had stood by her, gently touching the softest corners of her heart. From that day on, the principal unconsciously started paying closer attention to the coach, her eyes always drawn to him. She would watch him lead morning exercises, see him laugh while playing basketball with students, a bright, boyish grin lighting up his face. Witnessing all this sparked a forgotten passion and youthful vitality within her. Previously, Principal Martha Jenkins had been relentlessly serious, dedicated to endless duties, monitoring students, balancing budgets, running events, inspecting teacher work. Her days had been filled to the brim. Now, whenever she heard the coach's voice in the hallway, she would find herself wanting to peek in on his class, a secret flutter rising in her chest, even though she scolded herself for such foolish thoughts. One evening, as she passed the sports field, she noticed the gym lights still on. Curious, she pushed open the door and saw Coach Ben Carter, soaked with sweat, practicing basketball alone. Normally so cheerful with students, he now looked serious, even lonely. The echo of the bouncing basketball filled the gym, striking something tender within the principal. Perhaps, behind that bright exterior, he too felt lonely and uncertain. Some strange emotion rose within her that she couldn't quite name. That night, she sat alone in her office, tapping her desk, lost in thought. The following day, she arranged a meeting with the coach, framing it as a discussion about PE classes, but truly wishing to understand him better. Ben arrived on time, wearing a neat shirt, looking slightly uneasy as he knocked on the door. At first, they were both stiff, the principal asking formal questions and the coach giving routine answers about teaching and his future plans. Then, unexpectedly, she asked, "Coach Carter, are you settling in well at school lately? Is there anything you're struggling with?" The coach paused. He hadn't expected the principal to care about his personal feelings. After a moment's hesitation, he honestly replied, "Actually, I really enjoy teaching students, but I'm also very worried about when my substitute contract will end. Getting a permanent teaching position feels like a distant dream. My family also keeps urging me to find a stable job, so I try to keep smiling and work hard. But sometimes I still feel very lost." The principal quietly looked into his eyes. Perhaps there's a hint of dampness in his gaze. She thought, having experienced many ups and downs in life, she could empathize with his confusion. So she said something she hadn't anticipated herself. "You must be very tired, in fact. Even though I'm the principal and everyone seems to respect me, I often feel lonely, as if no one truly understands me at that moment." The tense atmosphere in the principal's office eased. The two slowly began to confide in each other about their deep-seated loneliness and hardships. That meeting was less a work report and more a heartfelt exchange from that day on. Whenever the principal had the chance, she would seek out the coach to talk. Ostensibly, she would discuss new sports activities or inquire about students' health. But in reality, she knew they were doing it for themselves. These meetings gradually became private times for mutual comfort and confiding, rather than purely professional interactions. At first, they were both very cautious, worried that colleagues would find it strange or misunderstand. But strangely, once they sat down, they would start talking about their innermost thoughts. Gradually, they started telling each other things like, "Principal, I've been a bit troubled lately," or "I've been thinking about this recently," as the awkwardness faded. They began to talk about everything. Even mundane daily matters outside the principal was serious and strict. But in her office, she would greet the coach with warm eyes and a gentle smile. The coach also began to shed his cheerful and outgoing facade, revealing the anxiety and unease hidden beneath, finally. One day the coach hesitated and said, "Principal, perhaps this sounds strange, but when I talk to you, I feel you're like both a mother to me, and I have another kind of feeling for you." Hearing this, 60-year-old principal Martha Jenkins was momentarily speechless. The "like a mother" remark made her a bit awkward. But at the same time, she realized this might be an expression of the coach's complex inner feelings. It was more than mere respect, and more than just dependence. What was certain was that neither could suppress the faint stirring of emotion deep within them from that day on. Even at home, the principal's mind was always filled with the coach's image. She couldn't remember the last time she had dreamed of love. She had dedicated her life to the school and had separated from her husband years ago. But the age gap was immense, and the disparity in their positions as principal and coach was significant. How could he possibly see me as a woman? I overthinking this, but she couldn't ignore the quietly burning flame deep within her in her lonely life. This warm care and respect held immense power. Meanwhile, every time the coach left the principal's office, his heart would race. He respected the principal and felt there was much to learn from her. But there was also an indescribable stirring in his heart. This feeling confused him. This isn't right. What would people say if they found out? And besides, have I truly fallen for the principal? All sorts of questions swirled in his mind, but the more conflicted they felt, the more frequently and deeply they communicated. During this time, the principal realized this was no longer a feeling she could ignore, and the coach also began to admit that the warmth he felt from the principal was more than mere respect. As their feelings became clearer, one day in a heart-pounding, tense atmosphere, the coach plucked up the courage and said to the principal, "Principal, perhaps this is very abrupt, but I've realized that over these past days, my feelings for you have gone beyond respect. I find you as a woman very special." Hearing these words, the principal was almost moved to tears. She had never dreamed that at her age she would hear such words. Her heart pounded, her lips trembled slightly, but she couldn't speak. Finally, she responded in a very soft voice, "Ben, thank you. I feel the same way when I look at you. I don't just see you as a teacher, as a woman. I also feel a stirring in my heart and a desire to lean on you. It's a very complex emotion that day. The principal's office door was tightly shut, and the two talked for a long, long time. They both knew that the age gap and external scrutiny stood before them. But the word sincerity broke through all their concerns from that day on. Even amidst apprehension, they firmly guarded their feelings for each other. But secrets, after all, couldn't be kept hidden in the small society of the school. More and more people began to notice the interactions between the principal and the coach, speculating if they were dating. Rumors began to spread, saying they were secretly talking in the corridors and often staying late together after work. Some whispered that the coach was deliberately flattering the principal for promotion, while others criticized the principal for showing favoritism. But the biggest issues remained the age gap and the significant difference in their positions. Some colleagues pointed and whispered that it was absurd, and some parents, upon hearing the rumors, also started to discuss it. The principal began to feel afraid. Had she gone too far, she began to blame herself. The coach also felt distressed. What if everyone sees me as an opportunist or a pervert as the school leader? The principal bore even greater mental pressure. I won't bring shame to the students, will I? But deep down, she had a strong desire not to give up on this relationship. Love sometimes makes people brave. The principal was no longer bothered by trivial matters as she used to be. Even when organizing documents or preparing activities, she expressed her opinions with greater confidence. The coach noticed this and became even more convinced that the principal was an extraordinary person. At the same time, he secretly vowed to become more mature and dependable. However, opposition from outside grew stronger. In particular, a senior dean of academic affairs formally raised concerns. She even threatened to report to the school board, accusing the principal of favoritism due to personal feelings. At that moment, the principal's sense of responsibility as a school leader clashed fiercely with her personal love. "Principal, what should we do?" "It seems I've caused you a lot of trouble because of me, and I feel very bad about it," the coach said anxiously. But the principal unexpectedly smiled gently and said, "I don't think you've done anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with loving someone. However, we do have certain responsibilities to bear as the school leader. I must be accountable to the students and the school. And you must also focus more on your PE teaching. Let's not deliberately hide it, but let's not be too ostentatious either." At that moment, the coach's respect and love for the principal intensified. This person was not just a woman blinded by emotion, but also someone with a strong sense of responsibility and reason. This realization made the coach's heart even more steadfast, just as rumors about the two spread throughout the campus. And criticism reached its peak. The principal herself received shocking news. She was pregnant for a 60-year-old principal. This was almost unbelievable. Initially, she had only felt tired and dizzy lately, which led her to get a checkup at the hospital. But even after hearing the diagnosis, she couldn't believe her ears. After leaving the hospital, the principal felt utterly bewildered. Is it really possible at this age? Is this true anxiety and astonishment intertwined? Nevertheless, the doctor confirmed, "This is extremely rare, but after thorough examinations, it's confirmed you are indeed pregnant. The risks are high, so you must rest well and avoid overexertion." The principal hesitated, unsure who to tell first, but eventually she dialed the coach's number on the other end. The coach heard the principal's trembling voice, her hurried breathing, as if she had run a long way to find a signal principal. "What's wrong, Ben?" "I'm pregnant." Silence. The coach was speechless for a moment, unable to respond. It was an unbelievable piece of news. The principal's palms were sweating from nervousness. But soon from the other end of the line came a trembling yet firm voice. "Really? Congratulations. No, this is a gift from heaven. I will take responsibility." When the news of the pregnancy reached the school, even those who had loudly opposed and criticized them were greatly shaken. Some exclaimed excitedly, "This is an outrageous scandal." But more people held the thought, if a child is to be born, isn't that a blessing of life? Even some perpetually cynical teachers looked at her with a complex mix of sympathy and pity. Wondering what would happen next, in reality, they themselves wondered if this situation was a blessing or a disaster. Their thoughts wavered back and forth dozens of times a day. But finally the principal made up her mind. I cannot give up this life. I must accept this gift that has descended upon me like a miracle. The coach also declared, this is our child. I will take full responsibility. No matter what voices of opposition there are, we must protect our child. After consulting with her doctor, the principal reduced her workload, delegating school matters to the vice principal and other teachers. The coach also tried his best to lighten the principal's teaching burden, allowing her to focus more on taking care of her body. The gazes of those watching them began to change. Little by little, criticisms began to turn into pity, then into respect and support. Of course, the pregnancy was not easy. As an elderly prima grata older first-time mother, the hospital regularly issued warnings. Reminding her of various risks, the principal prayed daily for the baby's safety during classes. The coach always held his phone tightly, worried about any sudden complications for the principal. Even so, both of them grew stronger. Their love, developing in an unexpected way, reinfused both their hearts with a craving for life and a sense of purpose. The principal shed her former authoritarianism and rigidity, revealing a more humane side. The coach also accepted the fact that he was about to become a woman's partner and a child's father, becoming more mature and steady than before. As time passed, the school atmosphere also subtly began to change. Young teachers were surprised to discover that the principal was such a humane person, while older teachers felt a strange sense of unity, sighing, life indeed holds all possibilities. Among parents, a wave of support to protect life and love also began to surge. Although there had been many conflicts and criticisms at school when the fact of the pregnancy became known to all, a consensus was finally reached that no matter what the child's birth should be welcomed in this situation, where it was hard to tell if it was a blessing or a scandal. Coach Ben Carter made a decision. Principal, should we get married now that we have a child? I want to be more responsible and committed. The principal hesitated for a long time. She feared being mocked by the world for marrying at her age, and feared she couldn't provide a complete family environment for the child. But when the coach, with sincere eyes, held her hand tightly, she finally made up her mind. Yes, this is the path we must walk together. Even if there were still uncomprehending glances around them, she could not deny her true feelings with the blessings of close friends, family, and some teachers. The two held a small wedding and officially became husband and wife. Among those who heard the news of their marriage, some still gossiped behind their backs. But most offered their blessings. A miraculous love had conceived a miraculous life, one with the power to melt away all negative gazes in the world. Now holding hands, the two stroll through the campus, watching students run and play. The principal's hair is still gray, but her face radiates a confidence and vitality that even young teachers can hardly match. The coach remains as lively and cheerful as ever. Occasionally, someone seeing them exchange smiles in the corridor would think, what is age if it's true love that's enough? Of course, they don't know what trials the future will bring. The risks of late-life pregnancy, societal scrutiny, and various work-related challenges still lurk ahead. But they are full of confidence in each other. In the latter half of her life, the principal once again experienced the joy and emotion of love, while the coach learned responsibility and dedication. Every day, the principal gently touches her belly, showing a happy smile, and the hearts of those around them are quietly changing from initial mockery and curiosity to cautious blessings and encouragement. This was an unexpected path, but the love that descended upon these two was absolutely a very special miracle. As they faced this miracle together, People understood what true sincerity was, what love transcended age, and how precious life truly is. And so the principal and the coach in the small space of Liberty High School filled each other's loneliness, moving forward towards a new future. No one can predict what surprises life will bring, but they have already taken a solid step towards a better love and greater responsibility, creating a world of their own.